don't know about his bill. I've read his bill, but I still, I'd like to have some experts. So we got two gentlemen here this morning, if they got with you, and we'll let them tell us a little bit about the bill, and then we'll go into the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Hunter.
He's on the list. He's got anybody else?
I'll be happy to.
All right. We're gonna try to limit everybody's comments to about 3 minutes. If we
Yeah,
can.
thank you very much. This is a piece of legislation, as Mr. Vance knows, has been worked on by the industry in the banking department for some 18 months concerning titling. Under the present law, there's some ambiguity as far as title loans under the existing Pawn Shop Act. We have many people in this room and others have met with the department and other people to try to come to some resolution of how to best work this. Originally, the banking department and others wanted a standalone bill, which meant take it out from under the Pawn Shop Act. But we came all the way back around in the banking department as of like a couple of weeks ago, told us they'd like to keep it under the Pawn Shop Act. With that in mind, there's been a number of meetings, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to try to get this resolved. And I know Mr. Vance has a substitute that makes some clerical corrections to the original bill. It also has some language that was left out inadvertently. But as far as the business of title pawn lending, the substitute will not affect what was in the bill that you have before you. With that, Mr. Chairman, does anyone have a question before you go into your public hearing?
Any questions, committee members? Okay, we're gonna start off with the opponents. And we'll start with Beauty Before Age, Mr. Reverend Dan Ireland.
I think we ought to have a motion on the committee that the chairman get his glasses changed.
So moved.
And then I'd like to have a unanimous consent of what I'm about to say. I looked at the sign-up sheet and it had for and against, and I wasn't really know which side I'm on signing that. Brother Bruce over here said, "Won't you just sign across the middle and get bold?" I think we need to clarify, it's been pointed out, clarify what needs to be clarified in this process in the state of Alabama. This coming June, committee members, I will celebrate 65 years in the preaching ministry, and I would say the major thrust of my ministry through these years has been to help people who are down and out. In the churches I served, that was a major mission work that we had in our churches. There's some people, and we never closed the door on anybody coming to our church. I would not even attempt to be pastor of church if we did not have an open door. And you have the needy people, particular little children. I've always had a great love and admiration for little children. I wasn't exactly raised up on Front Street. I knew what it was to wear a pair of Goodwill shoes to school on a pair of hats, and I had to wear them to church on Sunday. But I know what it is to be helped, but more than that, I thank God that I have an opportunity to help people that really and truly need it. And I don't think that we ought to, I think what we ought to do in this legislation, anything we dealing with this issue, we need to bear in mind what is best for those people that are desperate. Many of them are desperate when they come to a situation like this. There's a very fine Christian black lady in this city, and I guess in the last 2 years, my wife and I have given her $1,500 to $1,600 to help keep the lights on and the electricity going and help her keep her life going. And she's very precious to us. And I just hope that the committee, I understand that there's another possibility of another bill that is in line with this subject matter, and that you could work together to get the two of them together. I think it'd be very helpful, and would give the public an idea that you were concerned about doing the proper thing, putting both groups together.
Thank you, Dr. Allen.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Stephen Stetson.
Thank y'all, members of the committee, for having me this morning. My name's Stephen Stetson. I'm a policy analyst over at Alabama Arise, and we're honored to be working with groups like Brother Dan and groups from across the political spectrum on this issue of title loans. I've got 3 quick points that are built around the theme of no, and then we'll end on a yes. And first thing is, I was flipping channels last night, and what we're not talking about is Pawn Stars. We're not talking about people going in with their Bo Jackson autographed football, getting that pawn, or their old golf clubs, and they don't play in college the guitar anymore. You know, we're talking about people going in a moment of desperation and pawning their automobile. A moment where they feel like they need money so bad that they're going to put their family's only transportation on the line in exchange for a couple $1,000s to meet whatever need they're working on. And I just want to say up front that we think it's fair at Alabama Rise that if you put something up as collateral for a loan and you don't pay on that loan, it's fair that you lose it. That's fair. If I don't pay on my mortgage, they can come kick me out of my house. But the important distinction between pawning your car and putting your house up for a mortgage is, for a mortgage, they underwrite the loan and they look at my ability to repay that mortgage. When people go into these title pawn lenders, there is no underwriting requirements whatsoever. You just go in, give them the title, and walk out with money in your pocket. That is not the kind of legitimate long-term loan process that we need for low-income folks, seniors in Alabama. The last thing I want to say on that first point about distinguishing this from regular pawns is that these kind of loans being left under the Pawn Shop Act drag the legitimate pawn shops down. A lot of those regular pawn shop folks do not want to be lumped in with the car title lenders. They know that they're dealing in grandma's old ring, the guitar, the golf clubs, the stereo. They don't want to be lumped in with these folks. So this bill, by solidifying it under the Pawn Shop Act, drags the legitimate lenders down. Point 2, I just want to say that this bill is not reform. This bill does a couple of things, but it doesn't solve any of the problems with title lending. There's a dozen places in the Bible that says that high interest loans, usury, is forbidden. This bill doesn't do anything to address that. It doesn't do anything to address the price gouging, where we had the Attorney General crack down on people after a hurricane when they're charging $10 for a gallon of gasoline or $20 for a bottle of water. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior in Alabama. These loans are gouging. This bill doesn't address that. And the third no that I want to emphasize to y'all is that this isn't the right bill. Brother Dan mentioned it. There's a better bill coming. It's Rod Scott's bill. If my car has smoke pouring out from under the hood, I don't stop it and change the tires. This bill changes the tires on title pawns. The problem with title loans is not what statute regulates the title pawn. The problem is that they are high-interest, usury loans. So this bill changes the tires, and there's smoke pouring out from under the hood. The last point I want to make, and thank y'all for that, is to end on a yes, which is that there is a solution to this problem. Other states have figured it out. Arkansas, North Carolina, Florida. A lot of times when people say other states have gotten this right, they're talking about California, Massachusetts. I'm talking about southern red states have gotten rid of title pawn lending because they say it's bad for their citizens. Other states have figured it out. This bill makes real reform harder. If you pass this out of committee, it's going to be difficult. All we would ask is that you would compare this bill to the good bill side by side, and if y'all can find it in your heart to carry it over a week so we can play this bill next to the good bill, then you can make a more informed decision, and we'd appreciate that. Thank y'all for your time.
Craig Babb.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, my name is Craig Babb. I'm a senior fellow with Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. I would briefly compliment a few things that the people before me spoke. Number one, not only is this not a reform bill, it does almost nothing. I can't believe that anybody would work with 18 months on something where the only two reforms, improvements that you could put your finger on are, number one, if somebody doesn't pay their loan and their automobile is repossessed and it's sold for more than the loan, then the lender has to pay back the difference. It's kind of like saying you go into a grocery store and buy $10 worth of groceries, and you give them a $20 bill, and you're grateful to get $10 back. You should get that $10 back. Anyway, the bill does that. That's great. It should have happened a long time ago. Number two, the bill says that, and this is where it's not a reform, this is where it in fact increases the cost. Under the title pawn bill, there is a provision in section 519A7 that basically says, in a word, in lieu of interest or other charges for all services, expenses, costs, and losses of every nature, but not to exceed 25% of the principal amount per month advanced in this transaction. So in other words, you could have interest rates and all kinds of other fees, but if you choose not to do that and simply impose 25% of the principal, that's all you get. And then in B, it says that if you try to collect anything else, that those things are uncollectible and that the entire loan is void. What this bill does, what HB 421 does, is say in addition to that 25%, the borrower has to pay additional fees for selling the car, has to pay additional fees for repossessing the car. Those would be additional fees in addition to 25%. So as if 300% APR a year is not enough, this would in fact increase those costs, would not decrease the costs, and the bill doesn't say that. Finally, I think that people before me have correctly pointed out that there is a comprehensive bill that's coming forward. My understanding today, it did not get introduced last night. And if this issue is important for all of us, and all of you, and most of you I know have sponsored this bill, but I think that most of us are concerned that 300% APR is the issue. The rest of it is just rearranging the chairs in the deck of the Titanic. The issue is exorbitant high interest rates. This is 300% plus additional fees. The new bill that is being introduced would cap that at 36%. Some may say that's too low, but my point is that the conversation needs to be on the interest rate, and if it doesn't address the interest rate, it doesn't do a thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Robert Barnett.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Robert Barnett. I'm a pawnbroker from Huntsville, Alabama. I'm the current president of the Alabama Pawnbrokers Association. My family has been pawnbrokers for going on close to 40 years in a single store location. We are traditional pawnbrokers, and the members of the Alabama Pawnbrokers Association are very simply the Pawn Stars. It's been most easily referred to earlier this morning. We deal in tangible products where we actually take possession of the items. We have a few members of ours that also deal in title pawns, but we primarily represent and we primarily push forward in the state of Alabama traditional pawnbroking. This House Bill 421 we are directly opposed to. We would like to see the title loans be pushed out into their own law. Title loans are primarily operating in the state of Alabama underneath the Alabama Pawnbrokers Act as a court decision that allowed them in many years ago. We would like to see it separated out. We have worked with state banking for several years to have this moved out. We've just not been able to push them out of our law. They have a tremendous amount of money, which is much greater than our few hundred members have. They're primarily family businesses, small businesses. Most of our members have just one store that is run primarily by their families and family members. The state bank continually reports to us that they have virtually no problems with standard traditional pawnbrokers that we represent. A majority of the problems at any time anything is mentioned in the press or otherwise that people talk bad about pawnbroking, it is almost always the title loans that have caused the problems and created the black eye for our industry. Therefore, we suggest that this bill not move forward as written, and we are directly opposed to it.
Thank you. Jack Bradford.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you today. I'm Dr. Jack Bradford. I'm a volunteer for AARP and I serve on the State Executive Council. I represent today the 4,400 representative, not representative members of AARP. We've got a real stake in this bill. Older citizens of our state that get into financial troubles turn oftentimes to means of raising funds, either for themselves or for their children or their grandchildren. Consider, if you would, for a moment, if you were in such a situation and you had to come up with some money. Hawking your car might be just one opportunity. However, when you're hawking that car, no one asks you, are you going to have an ability to pay the exorbitant interest fees to repay the loan on your car title? Once you lose that car title, you lose a lot because you can't get to your doctor's appointment. If you decide to help repay it, you need to take a job, a second job. You can't even deliver pizzas. You've got to have a car. Folks, this bill needs to protect people. There are a lot of vulnerable folks out there that are falling prey to these high interest rates. And they don't have the ability to pay. And they do lose their cars. And it's happening every single day. I would like to recommend that, in your wisdom, you carry over this bill. Consider it very carefully and do what's right for the people of the state of Alabama. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the proponents, Charles Hunter.
Good morning.
Morning.
Committee members and chairman. Charles and I work for Triton Management. We are one of the pawnbrokers in this state. We offer conventional pawns across the state, and we also offer title loans. I don't know where to start on what all the folks before me have said, except to say that I think the great majority of them, unlike me, have never spent a lot of time in the lobby of one of our stores. We hear it from detractors, but our customers are not desperate, dumb, uninformed. They're not, they don't go through any underwriting process. They're all low income. There are other states that have similar products to what we propose that don't work. All these are not true. They're absolutely not true. Our customers are not dumb. These Alabamians know that a major part of their piggy bank or resource happens to be in their car, and the last thing they want to do is lose their car. But if this is the vehicle they choose to borrow some money, then it's their choice. And I can assure you they're informed. They know the ins and outs. It's a very simple process now, and what we have done with the banking department, we've met with them, as Terry said, for the last year and a half. It says, okay, what reforms do we need to make this product? How do we give the customer a choice to get out if they think they've made a mistake? We did that. How do we make sure that we're not keeping any proceeds of a repossession if all things go bad? And that happens very seldom. I can assure you, from a pawnbroker point of view, the last thing anybody wants to do is repossess anybody's car, because you lose a customer, and they lose their car. So we do everything in the world we can to work with those customers. So the bill before you addresses, almost without exception, everything that the detractors and the banking department has asked us for in the last year and a half. I don't know if any of you had questions about
Any
it.
questions from committee members?
I have one.
Yes.
Do you have the same customer, or is that a repeat customer?
Okay, in the current system, the only thing that's offered under the law is a 30-day loan, and that 30-day loan has to be repeated. And so the major part of this bill, what it does, it says that when the customer walks in, they'll walk out with a payment plan that requires principal reduction of 5% every month, or gives them a amortized loan of not less than 12 months and not more than 24 months. We happen to operate in South Carolina. We changed 3 years ago to this type of product in South Carolina. The customers love it. They all walk out with a payment plan. They know they're going to be paid off in 24 months. In 12 months, every customer we had in the entire state had changed to this product, away from a conventional product.
But I was wondering, like, if somebody's in, this year and they need a few dollars, and another year, another 2 years, do they come back to you? Are they satisfied with that process? Is what I'm wondering. If you're seeing the same customer back, that's why.
Yeah, they pay off and then come back. Yes.
But is your industry seeing that same customer over and over every year or two?
Well, if this is their only piggy bank, if this is their savings, why, and they're happy with the product, and they pay us back, and they want to come back a year later, I don't Well, if they can't move up to be a bank customer or go to the credit union or borrow money from family, then this is their preferred product.
But I'm wondering if you have personal experience with the same person coming back, does that tells me they are satisfied if they're coming back? That's why I was asking.
Oh, yes,
If you're seeing the same people over and over.
absolutely.
Okay. Because I know in traditional pawn shops, the same people are coming back.
But if you look at the customer complaints, the Alabama Banking Department has a customer complaint hotline. And every store that in Alabama has a great big poster on the store with an 800 number. And you call, if you're not satisfied with anything in one of our offices or any office in the state, you can call the banking department direct. And the banking department will tell you that the pawn side is the lowest number of complaints. Out of tens of thousands of transactions, they have less than 100 inquiries on that line every year. And as far as I know, every one of them is settled within 24 months. 24 hours, I'm sorry.
Black?
I like the amortization, I think, part of it is not there. But now, under the current law, which was carved out by a court case.
Yes.
In the pawn shop, which, when that pawn bill was introduced, there was no idea of including chattel or automobile. But what does that law now, what do you loan on now? I noticed this describes a lot of other things. Motorcycles, mobile trailers, semi-trailer, truck trailers, trailer, marine vessel, or other device that is self-propelled or drawn upon a public highway. Does that extend what your
Everything
base
is, as I understand it, in our company, we loan on everything that's included in that bill.
Okay.
We've not extended anything,
Okay.
As long as it has a title.
as long as it has a title.
And under this, you could loan on something that doesn't have a title.
Yes, because what's happened is, you may or may not know, the Department of Revenue has decided that all the old titles they want to get rid of. And so if you have a vehicle from 1972 to 1995, it may no longer have a title or lien, and it's still your piggy bank, it's still your car.
Why would they get rid? Why do they want to get rid of those?
They say there's so many millions of titles out there of vehicles that have been crushed, and they don't know the difference, so they're just getting rid of all of them. I can't argue with them, but that's what's happening.
Thank you.
Mr. Hurst?
How long has the Department of Banking been wanting people to do this?
We started at least 18 months ago, and the genesis of this bill, about 2 months ago, they wrote this bill and said, here, we'll work with you to make whatever changes are necessary. Let's come up with a bill. So this is not something I started or the industry started. They wrote the bill 3 months ago.
Department of Banking goes with all pawn shops out of those.
Yes.
They come in audit, checking and stuff.
Yes.
Vance, you got anybody else you want to follow up?
Yes, sir. I need to borrow Reverend Dan's cane.
Oh, please.
Thank y'all very much. I just want to mention a couple of things that were not brought out. Ms. Black, you brought out a good point. You brought out a good point, Mr. Butler, but one thing, if I go into a pawn today, do a title pawn, I have a business day to rescind that. If I'm not happy, I walk out, I come in the next business day and said, I want to null and void that process. That's it.
At no cost.
No cost. The other thing, you have 2 or 3 payment plans under this bill that you don't have under present law. The other thing, I've been watching Pawn Stars so much lately. It's kind of like watching reruns of Days of Our Life. And I know what the gentleman said about Pawn Stars. But I saw one last night where somebody brought in this Picasso and he charged him 25%. The guy didn't mind pawning his Picasso. But gentlemen of this committee, most of you have been on this committee over the years. We have some new members that we welcome. Remember this, the bottom line. When you cut off credit, or you tighten credit, some of you are bankers on here, Oliver and others. The people at the low end that need it the most are the first to lose it. Talking about Arkansas and these other states, people go across the line. Do you want to shut down these folks and let them go to loan sharks? The people that need the credit the most are the ones that will not. Thank you.
Mr. Vance?
The gentleman that just sat down, would you come back up a minute, please?
Charles?
Sure. How long did you say a while ago that you've been working with the banking people on this?
Yes, sir.
How long?
Jerry's recollection is 18 months. Mine is a little over 2 years ago that we started writing a standalone bill and we never could get an agreement on it. So when they handed us a bill 90 days ago that says, here's our version of a bill and it's sections added to the Pawn Shop Act, we said, okay, you know, we give up. We'll give that a try.
So did you at that time tell Mr. Harrison that you would rather not have that bill if he presented it or what?
No, I don't know how many times we've sat down with John, but we said, hey, we'd be glad to work with you, because everything in this bill, provisions are the great majority of the title pawn pledges would like to have. We'd like to have 24 months. We'd like to have a good definition of the title pawn. So,
Well, let me say this, I was at one time the chairman of this committee, and I worked very closely with Mr. Harrison, and I'm responsible for this bill. Not one time did Mr. Harrison call me with anything about my bill. This morning when you made that remark, the first time I heard the Harrison name, okay? But I just like to, and I think I'm within my rights, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, to tell Mr. Harrison he doesn't run my office over in the State House. If he's got anything to say about a bill that I bring up, he'll be man enough to come to me and talk to me about it before he goes and says, okay, I'm okay with it. And then you stand there and tell me, he says, that you wasn't okay with it. With the bill that he presented to you 18 months ago. Is that not right? Is that what you just said?
no, the conversations 18 months, 2 years ago were about a standalone bill, and we never could get industry and everybody to agree on it. So, 90 days ago, you said, okay, here's a add section with the pawn shop bill, and that's what we went with. That's what you said. That's a result of that process.
That's all I have to say. Other than, Mr. Chairman, one other thing. I'm through, sir. With you.
Okay.
One other thing I would like to say, though, Brother Dan, excuse me, come in a while ago, and the gentleman, I think, what was his name? Had the red tie on, I I would like, Mr. Stetson, if you tell me, if, let's assume, for instance, the lady that Brother Dan was talking about a while ago, that he's helped in his wife, Tommy's health over a period of time.
Yes, sir.
If that lady had a car and her lights, Dan wasn't helping her, and her lights and all was fixing to be cut off, her gas and so forth to her home, and she had the car, and she felt like that'd be the only way she could continue to live in that house, with electricity, gas, and so forth, in the coldest month in the year. How long would it take her to get that satisfaction done on that car? Upon it?
You mean for her to get an alternative source than the title pawn?
Yeah.
Well, what we've seen in other states that have gotten rid of
No,
title
we're talking
pawn.
about Alabama now.
Well,
Don't you
I
talk
think
about
what
Alabama.
would happen here is probably a lot of faith-based groups that would put their heads together. There's a lot of alternative sources like credit unions that are out there. And what happens in other states when they get rid of them is other sources of credit emerge. People borrow from family and friends and places that are not 300% APR. So people work it out. There's no demand to bring these things back once a place gets rid of them. And I agree with your point about the desperation. It's very real, and that's what drives people to these lenders.
Can I answer that question?
That's up to Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can I answer that question?
I'll give you about 20, 30 seconds, Mr. Scott.
That's fine. You know what we have is a very profitable industry. It's a super profitable industry because the interest rates are at 300%. Anytime you have an industry like that, every mom and pop shop opens to go into that business. When you cut back on the profitability of an industry like that, the more inefficient organizations drop out, and the efficient organizations step up and they replace those inefficient organizations. So you actually won't have a reduction in credit available at a lower interest rate.
Mr. Vance?
Let me just say this, as the sponsor of the bill, Brother Dan alluded to it a few moments ago. And somebody made some marks and then somebody come back and set it up. I think when a person goes into pawn something, I don't think we should say those are the low class people, if you will, instead of Alabama. I think they're people that's hurt. They need some help. I admire Brother Dan, what he and his wife did. But let me tell you this that happened in my city just maybe about a month ago. 78-year-old lady called me. She said, Mr. Vance, I need some help. I'm destitute. I eat dog, I want you to listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. I eat dog food 3 days out of the month. At the end of that month, before my Social Security check comes in the third. And I said to her, is there anything that you can go to the pawn shop and pawn? She said, I don't have none. We kept talking and she said, well, I do have so-and-so and so-and-so. And I said, well, why don't you do this? Won't you let me come out and pick you up, go to the pawn shop and see if they have someone to come down and look at it and give you the money. Well, she did. She didn't get quite as much, but she did do that to try to survive, so to speak. I turned around and I gave that lady a $100 bill to help her buy groceries. I even took her to the grocery store and did it. These are the kind of people that we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, in this room this morning. They are begging and want us to help. And we got a certain element of people here this morning and said, no, we're not going to do that. We want to close down the pawn business, blah, blah, blah. I think we're acting in the wrong direction. I think we ought to help those people that can't help themselves. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to say.
Any motion?
I'm gonna make a motion to give a bill fair.
Substitute.
Adoption, we
Got a substitute.
It just corrects some, top gas errors, like this, referring to top of pond, there's
I got it. Didn't see a change, really.
It's mainly, Mr. Black, typographical errors.
Where are they? Usually say before
I
you
can give
get
them to you. Like, also, under the definition of title poem, part of that was left out.
Okay,
For sale.
that answers it.
Yes, but it's nothing changes the ability to do this, it's more or less under this. You know, sometimes LRS does a great job, they have a comma, a word is left out, like one part, word charge is left out. Yes, sir.
No, that's fine. I mean,
We have a motion to adopt as a substitute for House Bill 421. To have a second. Second by Mr. Hurst. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Substitute passes. Any amendments? I got a question by Mr. Black.
I was under the impression that there would be some work done on this bill after it left this committee. Is that your understanding?
Mr. Vance,
Can you help us?
Mr. Vance, like for Mr. Spencer.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Black. All of y'all know me. If I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. We will work with anyone, not that Mr. Vance, that we can come to an agreement. We will try and work with any industry. We'll work with the banking department. We'll work with Arise, AARP. By the way, I'm a standing member. Even I'll work with Representative Scott.
But
my
you
buddy.
did not, so don't
No,
mention
but
my
I
name,
will.
it did not work. I started this process 18 months ago, and then they,
That's about right.
But
well, I understand, that's why I didn't sign up.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna sit here and listen to someone
all
say
right.
something that's not
No.
true.
My question is working with, and listening and agreeing with, you know, I was just under the impression that there were certain items, right now, there are no items to be changed that you're aware of. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Okay. We have a motion to accept, House Bill 421 as substituted. Got a motion by Mr. Vance, a second by Mr. Hurst. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. House bill as substituted 421 passes. End of committee meeting.